camera for the majority of the session. Thank you, Zan, for hitting record. But beyond that, if you have any questions, please feel to unmute yourself or to submit them in the chat. And as per usual, there will be a survey at the end of the session. So if you could please fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. But other than that, I'm gonna hand it off to Anu and Mahendra to get started. So there you are.
So thank you, thank you. It's great to be here. I'm gonna go ahead and try to share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, I can see it.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, it's wonderful to be here. And
Anu, I think your microphone is not working for some reason.
I can hear.
Yeah, we can hear.
Perfect.
Okay.
Cool. It wasn't working on my side. We're good now.
No worries. No worries. Okay. Glad we got all settled in. So it's always, we did this talk last year, different topic, but it's always really fun to be able to give a talk with your parent and share a couple of generations of learnings and advice. I'm still learning from my dad myself. So this is as much of a talk for me as it is for everyone here. But we'll get started and sort of just tell you a little bit about ourselves. I am Anu. I am a founder, an entrepreneur, an investor, and a daughter, and I have grown up around startups. I've grown up around this concept of don't work for somebody else, work for yourself, and build something, create that ownership and control, and most importantly, be a salesperson, whether it's selling to investors or bringing on top talent and bringing on really, really great people and selling them on the vision of your company, selling to your customers, selling to an acquirer, whatever it is, you have to be able to understand your audience and close the deal. And I've done that through my career so far, graduated from the University of Michigan and then moved back to Cincinnati and built my first startup, Admit Ally, which was a education technology company. And we sold to colleges, and the business model was really difficult to hack, but eventually found our groove. And in October of this past year, we actually sold the business to a company called Nestlings, who acquired us. And shortly thereafter, I built a venture studio called Candid Ventures, and we're building companies across multiple sectors, selling to totally different types of audiences. And it's really, really fun to play so many different roles as an operator and an owner and an investor and a mentor and all the things in between. And we'll get into sort of the tactics and how we did those things, but I'll pass it off to my dad, Mahendra, and have him share a bit about himself too.
So thank you, Anu. Thank you, Pete and Centrifuge team for giving us an opportunity. I have a slightly different background than Anu, as you can imagine. I came as an immigrant to US, literally not a typical Indian story, literally with $312. Decided never to take money from anyone. And I didn't have financial aid because I barely got into Michigan that year. So my first job, I had 1 week before fees were due. In 1 week, I had to find a TA or RA. Went to 100 doors, 100 professors. My goal was simple. I have to find a professor who is going to give me teaching or research assistant so I don't have to pay tuition because I didn't have money. I had money for first semester and that was it, just like any other startup. And first week, I had to close that deal. So it started from there. And all of you guys, especially you, the next generation kids, you guys are selling every day. I remember Anu selling, to me so many times, like, I got this friend in town. I'm not going to see him for another 5 years. He's gone. This is the last time he's coming to town, Dad. I got to go tonight. And she used that about 4 or 5 times until I finally said, this is BS. And so one of the lessons we are going to learn today is that BS doesn't work beyond a point. but she closed that deal multiple times. So I think, I started as an entrepreneur. I had 5 startups before I started Vora Ventures. First one was called ICC, sold to Digital Communication Associates. Second one was Pioneer Systems. I sold to Unisys Corporation. Then we started IntelliSeek, and my partner, Pete Blackshaw, we merged together with Planet Feedback, sold that to AC Nielsen. Then we started Secure IT, we sold to VeriSign, and so on. And in 2006, I started Vora Ventures. Again, practically restarted with one company, $400,000 and 5 employees. And we have grown, for a lot of you kids, it may or may not mean a whole lot, but 45% CAGR. That's 45% compounded annual growth every year in number of people, revenue, clients, and the business size. And that, I'm not a sales guy. I learned sales, and we'll talk about our whys, through the necessity. I was a hardcore geek. Like, honestly, just imagine, I came to a different country. My academic English was good, but my accent was thick. Lot of jokes on that someday, when the appropriate, time. But I had to learn that. I had to learn the culture. I have to learn what matters to an American buyer. I had to learn, what can I use? Is it my intellect? Is it my product? Is it myself? Is it my need? What can I use depending on the audience? I had to learn that, so fumbled a lot, failed a lot, but had this amazing resilience out of a need. So I think the first thing is that a lot of people think that their need, the fact that they don't have resources, the fact that they don't have money, the fact that they're not a big company, the fact that they're lost, they're nobody. Trust me, girls and guys, that is a strength. That is not a weakness. Use it as a strength. It's the power. Convert that problem into opportunity. Convert that into a desire so no one can compete with you. Convert that into desire that you are not going to take no easily. Convert that into an opportunity. And I can give you tons of examples where large companies told me, we'll talk about that. You're too small for us. Okay, how do you deal with it? When VCs told me, you're too early for us. How do you deal with it? When senior executives who are really experienced people, I needed them, I didn't have money to pay them salary, and I had to sell them. How do you attract them? To your employees, to your family, when you're working day and night, you have to sell that this is for the future. So anyway, we'll talk about it, but your why is you. Why is you and your authentic story. That's the first. And as long as you believe in you and your authentic story and you remain true to it, rest of it you can learn. And we'll talk about some of those techniques, some of those things that we have learned over time, both my generation, some old school, some old style, and some new generation, what Anu has learned over the last 4 or 5 years, and hopefully previous 5 years just listening to me. What she'll share that, and our combination, some of the perspectives will be different. I have some different perspectives than she has. Things that she's working on probably are more modern, and they work better than some of the techniques I do. But ultimately, it's all about understanding your why, understanding customers' why. And you will learn that people, and I'm stealing this sentence from Simon Sinek. He has a book called Power of Why. He has an 18-minute TED Talk called Power of Why. It's absolutely fantastic. Don't start with what, don't start with who, start with why. And I think, we'll talk about some of our learnings, our whys, and what made us successful. Anu?
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about a lot of tactics here in a moment, but just to double down on that last point from my dad, the most important trait that a salesperson has, I think, is self-awareness. Because you need to understand, how is the person that you're trying to sell to looking at you? Who are you? What values do you embody, right? How are you coming off? And that means you need to know who you are at a core level in any interaction, no matter who you're selling to. And you also have to uphold those values. sales is not about lip service. It's about actually embodying your own values and showing up and doing the work every day. And the more of a track record you build, the easier it is to sell over time. So let's get into that.
So I came to US, thank you, Anu, to be a professor. Honestly, I joined the PhD program. I want to be a professor. So every time there is an opportunity for me to become a professor for 5 or 10 minutes, I love it. Unfortunately, I couldn't pursue that career. That didn't happen for me. But now I have an opportunity. Now that Anu is there to take the helm over the next few years, take care of all of our investments, our companies, and it's just so amazing to have your daughter come and be interested in what you're doing, learn and build upon that. So I truly can actually start sharing and spend a lot more time with community. So first thing, and the next one, I'm going to tell you is a very simple thing called 4 phases of selling. Okay. Can I have the next slide, please? 4 phases of selling. Okay. What are the 4 phases of selling? There is emotional selling. Okay. Emotional selling. You sell yourself. You sell the values of your company. Don't talk about product. You sell who you are. It's about building the credibility. It's about building the empathy for you. It's about them believing you are a decent human person. You're not here to make a quick buck. You actually care. That's the first thing. What you get out of that is, let's say you met a CEO on a plane. You just started telling your story. And depending on what your story is, you could be selling a product. You can have a startup and you're looking for money. You are trying to hire some people. It doesn't matter. You met the CEO of a company who is a powerful person but doesn't know the details. So if you communicate your story in a very high level called elevator pitch, but more than that, yourself, the CEO most likely 90 out of 100 times is not going to understand what you're saying. But they'll remember you, not your product, not maybe even your company or value. They'll remember you. You say, I met this person. Wow, she's so real. She really cares. She's smart. That, whatever those attributes are, CEO says, you know what, I'm going to introduce you to our VP of technology. I'm going to introduce you to our CTO. Why don't you talk to them about the details? I'm going to introduce you to our head of our fund that we just started, that's starting to invest in startups, whatever that may be. Credible, emotional sales, right? Then you get to the next level where you talk about the concept. What's the concept? What are you trying to do? Don't talk about features, functions yet. Who are you trying to help? This is where the why, everywhere it's about starting with why. In first emotional phase, why do you want to work with me? In next conceptual phase, why this concept is important, why you need to transform your company, why you need to absolute your company, why you need to assume that you're going to go out of business in 5 years. So if you don't start looking at some of the things that we are doing, you're going to do a disservice to your shareholder, to your employees. You need to take a look at it. Create that sense of interest, the sense of inquisitiveness, the sense of urgency to say, like, we cannot afford not to look at this. At a minimum, we should really look at it. And that gets you meeting to the next level of person typically, which is director, the purchasing person. And that's where you get to logical phase of selling. Logical phase is, really less and less about soft, and it gets harder and harder. You start very soft and emotional stage. You remain a little bit harder in conceptual stage. Now you're in logical sales. Now you have to be very tangible, very specific, exactly what you're doing and exactly how that's going to help your company, or exactly why you need to join my company. So in emotional stage, I'm trying to hire somebody. I'll tell them that I'm trying to change the regional economy. I want to give back to this community. I cannot do it alone. I need help. There are areas we are not good at. Those are the areas you are really good at. Please consider being part of our team. In conceptual stage, I will talk about we can change healthcare. Your healthcare background is extremely important. You can do a lot of things in helping patients, helping doctors, helping insurance companies. Logical stage, I have to say, I want you to join as a VP of marketing. I want you to join as a VP of sales or CEO. This is the kind of compensation we are talking. This is the kind of equity ownership we are talking. This is what it will mean to you. If we are successful, you'll make $11 million. If we are absolutely go out of business, you will get half of what you're making. Be honest, direct. If you're selling to a company, this is how much it will cost you. This is how much it will return to you. This is the potential benefits to you. If you're selling to a consumer, if you're selling to a B2B, if you're selling to an employee, these concepts remain same. Emotional, conceptual, physiological sale. Logical is again all about details. And once they say, you know what, I agree with you, I want to do this, that's where, guess what it turns into? Contracts, T's and C's, legal, procurement, process to close the deal. Now, the key thing about this is, just so that you know, these phases, although they are phases, it's not a serial process. In fact, it's not even about the process. It's about understanding, having a sixth sense, and knowing how quickly to switch from one phase to another. Sometimes there is such a huge opportunity. The client gets it in like first 10 minutes. You want to move to logical phase as quickly as possible. Sometimes you're dealing with such a high level of a client or decision maker, then you need to take it down, in a couple of steps, and you need to pace it in the right manner with them so that you don't look desperate. And we'll talk about that. So these are 4 phases. The purpose of emotional sale, build credibility. Purpose of conceptual sale, get them interested and say, you know what, there is something here of value. Logical sale, that's it. Hard sale, you know exactly the value you're delivering, what they're going to get the return. Physical sale, you got to be prepared to work with them process. And there'll be a lot of objections in that process, legal, they want this detail, they want this, and you have to deal with that. So these are the 4 phases of selling. Again, they're not sequential. You have to have the sixth sense to jump. Process only helps you with consistency, repeatability, with some guidelines. Process doesn't sell. Process is a tool. It's a means to an end. You need to know the end. You need to be in control of these things. Say, I know exactly where I am with this person. So those are the 4 phases of selling. If you have any questions, jot down. You can, if you want to answer, ask now, or we can go back. We have only 3 slides, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about examples and question and answers.
Yeah, and I just also want to point out that these phases are not limited to any one type of sale. So again, think about selling as a concept of making sure your point or your message or your outcome is achieved with cooperation from another party. So that means I need to sell my product or service that my startup is building. Great. I need to sell that to my customer. I need to sell my pitch deck to an investor. Great. I need to get them through to the finish line. Make sure I maintain control through these phases and get that check at the end of those interactions. I need to sell a really, really incredible employee that maybe is out of my price range, or maybe, I'm not sure I can get them, but if they join my team, my startup will be in a completely different place, and we'll win together. I need to sell that person on joining my team. So no matter who you're selling to or how you're selling or what the deal is, these phases, I think, are consistent and remain true throughout any sale that you're trying to make. And I've sort of, learned and watched my dad move through these phases in our companies. It could take as much as 6 months to a year to really get a really, really big client in the door for a software or SaaS deal. But sometimes you can make a sale in a week, and you can meet a person, on Monday, and you can build that credibility in that emotional phase and say, do you want to continue the conversation with me? And you can move through these steps depending on who you're selling to and the appetite and the context and all that. you can move through that and sign a deal by the end of the week. So
And really, this should be called 4 aspects of selling, because phases sometimes mislead you to say this is sequential. This is really 4 aspects of selling, and it works, right? If I'm talking, I need to know my audience. If I'm talking to Pete Blackshaw, okay, and if I'm trying to sell something to Pete Blackshaw, I have to understand who Pete is and I have to care, and we'll talk about that. But Pete cares for what? Community, sustainability, long-term vision, okay, making a difference, kicking butts to the West Coast and East Coast. I have to understand what matters to. And then I take my proposition, which is could be conceptual, and then get to specifics. Go to the next one, please.
Hey, can I add a point?
Yes,
of course.
of course.
Yeah. So one of the, kind of building, because emotional is, I agree. It's actually, it's a constant. And one of the things that I learned, my first job was as a press secretary. And so I was always trying to sell media stories. And a lot of times the reporters who hated being sold to, they would just hang up the phone before I even said hello. And then what I learned is that you almost had to give them like 3 or 4 favors that had absolutely nothing to do with your self-interest, to kind of build that credibility, and to some extent, I think thought leadership in business is part of that, because you're almost like trying to make the client feel like a hero, make them look smart. And then, and that in a way is kind of building your credibility, but you kind of need to, you got to put deposits into that credibility bank before you go to them. But you kind of know that when the right moment is there, and there's always a moment where you really need to accelerate that sales cycle, that credit, that emotional connection is critical.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So then, okay, that's the process, and those are the different aspects of selling. But let's talk about, anybody can learn that. So the problem with is that if we teach a course in universities, which we don't, and I don't know, even Harvard doesn't teach selling. Everybody teaches marketing. In fact, most people don't even understand the difference between marketing and selling. It's like accounting and finance. Okay, marketing is creating demand. Selling is fulfilling demand, closing a deal. Okay, and like accounting is about once you get the money, what do you do with it? What did you do with it? But finance is where you're gonna get the money from. Finance is like marketing. Accounting is like sales. So sales is something that's not easily taught. A lot of people believe that, am I a closer or am I not? Is this a trait I can get it by learning, by going to school, by processes, by going to webinars? Or is it something that I just don't have it in me? Will I ever get it, right? The truth is somewhere in the middle, okay? Closing is an art. But if you have some resemblance, if you have a little bit of desire and confidence in you, okay, that I believe I can do this, I think you can learn with the process. But if you don't have anything in you, no one can help you with the confidence. No one can help you with clarity. No one can help you with conviction. You have to have that. Once you have that and you follow some basic processes of why at every stage, let me talk about a few things that I have seen, the traits of closers. Closers, the real closers. First of all, let me just tell you one thing. There was a phase in our economy that we hated salespeople. A lot of people looked at 20 years ago, I'm telling you, when I was a hardcore geek, I looked at salespeople like, oh, you work for sales? Oh, I equated sales to used car sales in my mind. It was a preconceived notion in my mind that sales means lying. Sales means bad. Sales means they're going to just take my money and not deliver. That's all gone. Take it out of your head. Okay? Salespeople, people on Wall Street close deals, brokers. And if we don't have time, I'll tell you about a deal. A broker made $125 million from 4 golf games with a company that Pete and I sold our company to. Okay, so it's about Empathetic. You have to be empathetic. You have to truly, truly care for your client and their best interest and the decision maker. So if you're dealing with Procter and Gamble, it's not just P&G, it's the person who is making that decision for you. Their credibility, their career, their personal objectives, what they have to deliver to P&G, you are going to help them do that. It's so important to understand and care for that. Agility is so important. You have to stay agile, and never lose a momentum. Like, when you're going through the sales, I like that you have to see the signals of opportunities. And in Indian mythology, there is a god. They have like 10,000 gods, right? India is like, everybody has like 200 gods. One of the gods is called Lakshmi, Laxmi. That's a god for wealth and prosperity, right? So they have a saying that when Lakshmi is knocking your door, and you go to the door and you open the door and you see Lakshmi there, that means an opportunity. You cannot say, let me close the door, I don't look good, let me go freshen up and come back. It's gone. No opportunity, no time. So when there is an opportunity, you have to see that. You cannot lose momentum. Process is important, but you have to have especially those who are founders, those who are entrepreneurs, those who are leaders. Sometimes you ditch the process. You're not an enemy of the process. You need to have a judgment. And what is judgment? How do you define judgment? Knowledge is one thing, correct? Information is below that. People have information but not have knowledge. People have knowledge but not have wisdom. People have wisdom but don't have judgment. Ultimately, what matters is judgment. Judgment is, and what is the definition of judgment? Ability to make, long sentence, better and better decisions with lesser and lesser information in lesser and lesser time, and having to make the correct calls on the go. A salesperson has a good judgment about what's the right opportunity, when is the right time, when to slow down, when to accelerate, when to ditch the process, when to follow the process, when not to be in their face. Another thing, for those who are founders, who are doing startups, sales culture. If you go to Bay Area and Midwest, one of the differences you see is that in Midwest, we think that, oh, I am just a technology. I don't sell. Salespeople are different. Then I am just marketing. I don't sell. Everybody sells in a startup. Front desk person sells when they greet people. That first experience matters. That's part of selling. The technology person, head of R&D, comes and talks about this voodoo magic and how you are doing AI matching and future is this. They are selling without wearing the salesperson's head. So selling is also a team effort. Selling is a team sport. And you as a conductor of the symphony, if you're the salesperson in charge, have to understand when to go in the back seat, when to just bring the donut and coffee and not say a word when one of your technology people are talking about the future to the client. So closers are very agile, very receptive. They understand the value of process. They know how to ditch the process, and they see the opportunities as they come. We'll talk about examples. So I'm going to move the philosophical part faster, and we'll talk about some examples. Anu, can we get the next one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a good spot for an example, actually. So first of all, I think it's very different for my dad with his experience to embody these principles than me. And sometimes these things take me a bit longer because I'm earlier in my career, and I don't always know, and I'm very lucky to have him to understand, when do I ditch the process? When do I double down on a process? How do I close this deal? Things take a little bit of time. So these are lessons that he has learned over his lifetime of wins and his incredible career. And it's something that even I am like learning to embody over time. So I wanted to shout that out really quickly. It takes a whole lifetime of experiences to really master all of these traits. And, when I was selling, I was trying to build my first company out of college. I was trying to build a mentorship platform where high school students could meet with current undergrads, and they would have video chat conversations and figure out how can you help that high school student make the right decision for themselves. So let's focus less in the college admissions process about, getting into Harvard, and let's focus more about how do I find the right school for me where my potential will be reached? And how do I find mentors that are at those colleges that I'm considering that will help me make this decision for myself? We started out by trying to sell to the high school students and their families, right? We tried to get them to understand that this was an important part of the process. Just like some people hire SAT tutors to get them through the exam, you should probably hire mentors to help you figure out how to get clarity on what schools to apply to, how to write the best essays, how to decide when you have multiple offers from different universities to which school. And we couldn't get anybody to buy. No students wanted to pay for it. When he gave it out for free, when we were doing our testing, everyone was so interested in the product. We had hundreds and hundreds of calls. But when it came time to actually get them to spend money with us individually, 40, 50 bucks per call, people didn't do it. And we had to be agile to figure out, okay, this company has value. People show up for these calls, but maybe we've misunderstood who the buyer is here. And we started selling to colleges. And the process took a long time. Colleges have really long sales cycles. I didn't know anything about this space. It was my first time really navigating the higher ed and admission spaces. And I just never gave up. I knew that I could deliver them value. I went to every conference. I understood exactly what the psychology of my buyer was. I built relationships, at colleges all across the United States. And I figured out what the psychology of the dean of admissions, who is the ultimate buyer of my product, would be and what they were trying to do. I would schedule like 50 calls per month with universities and just start the process for each one of them. And over time, it took a really, really long time. And I'm trying to hit on every single note on this slide right now. But over time, we were able to actually get universities to buy packages. And the important thing is that sometimes these things happen quickly, but sometimes you really have to be patient and you have to rely on your conviction. And that's another trait of, I think, a successful salesperson. I knew when I needed to ditch the idea of selling directly to high school students and their families. I was like, this is just not working, and it's time to ditch this tactic and try something else to make this business successful. That was a call that I had to make as a salesperson to understand who was my buyer and who was not. There was another fork in the road, and that's, do I continue trying to sell to colleges even though I've been at it for 6 months and I haven't gotten a single college to sign up? Do I ditch or do I double down? And that was another point where I had to use my judgment and rely on my conviction. And I decided to double down. And ultimately that was the correct decision, because we were able to close deals with universities and we were able to sell them on the idea that they needed to better their enrollment funnel. And if they wanted more students to accept their offers at their university, then they needed to put an effort and they needed to pay for one-on-one high touch conversations with mentors. And ultimately a lot of colleges that bought from us saw huge increases in enrollment. And that required everyone in my engineering team to understand the sales funnel and all of these different pieces. So it took me 3 years to figure it out. And ultimately then I was able to sell that company along to a buyer. But I'm hoping you can draw from that story a little bit of each one of these traits and tactics were implemented in different phases in different ways. And there was a lot of learning that happened along the way. All right. So some do's and don'ts. Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, thanks, Anu. This is like one of my favorite things. And then we get into question answers. We want to spend more time on that. So we will we'll get there, in the next 3 or 4 minutes. Some of the things I want to tell you, something that's probably going to shock you. Show versus tell. Do not kill all deals and all customers with PowerPoint. PowerPoint can kill people. If PowerPoint is your crutch and that's the only way you can present, maybe you shouldn't be presenting. Learn how to present from one slide. You need to have PowerPoint. The problem with the PC people is that venture capitals, if you go and say you don't have a business plan, they are upset. If you say I have a business plan, but there's 100-page, they're like, why did you spend so much time doing it? Right? So you got to have one. Just You got to have PowerPoint of 50 slides so you can train people, you can train new people. But if you take clients to 50 slides of PowerPoint, I have seen so many people screw up 1 hour meeting by going through PowerPoint for 55 minutes, and decision makers start showing their body language. They're like, hey guys, thanks. I just want you to know I have a 1 o'clock hard drop. And then those meetings were scheduled for half an hour. They last for 90 minutes because they are interested. And suddenly they are willing to postpone other meetings. You need to know how to have them be interested at every second. And I tell you firsthand, I used to do a lot of PowerPoints, and as soon as I realized this is not connecting by just watching the signals in the room, I said, I actually use the word like, screw the PowerPoint, guys. Let me just draw it. And I dropped the PowerPoint at slide number 6 and say it's not important because we have limited time. Let's just talk about it. And I flipped, I switched. That was a ditch the process decision right there because I was watching my audience. PowerPoint helps you prepare, helps you, everything is fine. The best technique, I tell you, the best tactic that I have personally worked for me is that I always believe that if you cannot tell your story in one diagram, you don't know how to tell story. One sentence is hard, but one diagram is not hard. One diagram, you should be able to speak for 1 hour for your value proposition. One diagram, that's it. And you know what I did? I redrew that diagram in every meeting. I didn't come and present a slide. I did it in front of them at the board. Imagine this, these are your clients, this is your backend platform, this is this, this is this. They're like, oh, so they are with me in building that diagram. Right? And then I can talk about everything else. In fact, if you train yourself to one slide, I promise you will end up saying everything that is on a 49 slides. You will end up saying that. But if you go through the sequence, you'll be repeating yourself. No BS. It used to work maybe in 60s and 70s and 80s. No BS. People are really smart. People assume that your client is smarter than you. Okay, assume that. Those who believe that I'm smarter than my client are not the real salespeople. Okay, reality may be otherwise. When you're dealing with some large companies, they may be so much behind and you think you are so much ahead of them. Bring them with you. That's the mistake I made in my early years. I was so much ahead of them. I intimidated the hell out of them and I lost them. I was so fast with numbers. I was so fast with my excitement, my presentation. I made them feel like they're not smart in the meetings. I had to learn that. Because given a few more days and few more hours, everybody is equally smart. Just few more days and few more hours, everyone gets to the same point. So don't BS. Be authentic. Listen, watch for signals. I just told you, Anu told you about this. You have to watch for signals, cues in the room, the body language, and be prepared to change. You have to show that you care, not a lip service. You will actually have to. Listening is #1 trait in selling. Listening like an idiot is #1 mistake in selling. Steve Jobs told people consumers don't know what they want. We have to tell them what they want. Well, that was an attitude. There are other people who listen so much to their clients, they just keep on just trying to make them happy by changing their product constantly. The balance is somewhere in the middle. Judgment. You listen enough, you tell enough, you cross them in a polite manner, they love that. You challenge them and say, have you thought of this? This way, this way. But you show in all. Do your numbers. One of the biggest problems I have with a lot of salespeople is that as soon as you tell them, when I test my salespeople who come to sell me, I'm like, so if I get 10% discount first year, 15% next year, and 20% third year, can you do the deal? The person says, well, I don't know. I have to do this. And they take 18 minutes to calculate. I'm sorry, I got another meeting. I'm done. You don't have to be genius in math, but you need to understand enough that 10%, 15%, 20% average is 15% over 3 years. An average of 15% on $1 million deal is $150,000. Who cares if you're signing a 5-year contract? So at least give them an indication. I think we can do it, but I'll confirm tomorrow. That's more positive. So, be smart, make them feel that you are smart, because the funny thing, I tell you, biggest dichotomy is that if you make your customers feel stupid, they don't want to work with you. But every customer wants you to be smarter than them. It's funny. You just listen to what I'm saying. Every customer wants you to be smarter than them because that's their attraction. But if you make them feel stupid, they don't want to work with you. And you have to know what that means. It's partnership. It's building. Remember one thing. I work for Vora. Anu works for whatever. Pete works for whatever. Zen works for whatever. The buyer at P&G also works for somebody. We are all working for somebody, but we are really working for our families. We have jobs to do. We have fiduciary responsibility. I have to protect my career at Procter or Kroger or whichever company you're selling. So, and the last one is urgency without desperation. This is a big trait. So much urgency that you are in their face, not going to work. Not going to work. But no urgency, big companies, especially, sorry for all those folks from big companies on this call. Big companies, people have zero sense of urgency, minimal. Because they are thinking so far ahead, the impact of what they do in next 3 months probably doesn't matter until they get a call next day. This quarter is bad, we got to do something. Okay, and then everything becomes quarter-centric. So they switch from completely strategic to completely quarter-centric. And we are in between. So I think urgency without desperation is really important. That shows your power. Ultimately, again, I'll tell you, ultimately, when it comes to sales, the best way I can summarize is connection, conviction, and clarity. Connection, empathy, connection. Clarity of what you're selling and genuinely how it's going to help them. Clarity, specifics, and conviction that you are there. You're going to deliver that. Boils down to 3 things: connection, clarity, and conviction.
I think
And then-
sales is really about making an argument land, right? And what are the premises of that argument? How do you actually get somebody to buy into what you're trying to make happen? And another way to think about it is also, how do you create a win for somebody else that will generate a win for you too, and not make them feel like you're only looking out for yourself, right? You're really trying to make other people win. If you're selling your product to a customer, you need to be able to make the argument that your product will save them dollars and cents, will help them improve their process, will do something very tangible for them. You'll be able to prove that. It has to be real. It has to be tangible. They have to believe in that, right? And that's what will ultimately sell. If you ever come off as being desperate because you need this win, right? I need this for my company, that never sells. No one will ever buy what you're selling if you're clearly looking out in your own self-interest. You need to be altruistic. You need to be thinking about, from the buyer's perspective, how can I make their lives better? If they're not responding to your emails and you're following up and you're doing the processes, back off for a little bit. But the second they reach back out, be there, be reliable, be extremely responsive, and pick things back up. Don't hold it against them, because again, your purpose is to make your buyer, acquirer, investor, customer successful, right? And that has to, I think, come through in every single interaction.
You know what they say, that your relationship with your client, if you want to measure, is measured by your third deal. Third time when they buy from you, that's the testament to your relationship. Okay? First time you somehow got it, these are second. Third time when they buy from you, the sales effort is low, the trust is amazing. So now let's talk about some examples. One of the things, can you go to the previous slide, Anu? One of the things we talk about, traits of closers. What are the traits of closers that we talked about? A salesperson who has got clarity, conviction, and connection. She doesn't take no easily. That doesn't mean you won't fail. We failed a lot, but you don't take no. I'll give you an example. I was trying to hire a CEO of one of my companies. That CEO was running a $6 billion company as CEO. We had a startup with 17 employees, 17 employees. We needed that CEO to really, really bring the knowledge and relationship, the context, sophistication. That CEO made obviously 7 digits in salary. My company's total sales were not in 7 digits. Okay. I had to do a sales job of getting them. That CEO you should talk to someday. He's on our group today. I quoted him. He uses the word dating. I don't like that, but he says I dated him for 6 months before we closed the deal. Okay. 6 months. And you know what I do? One rule I'll tell you, when you're raising money, that's another kind of sales, right? Typically, when you ask for money, you only get advice. So if you want money from rich people, you just ask for advice. It's amazing how it works. Oh, really? Because you're respecting them, you're respecting their opinion. I asked for so much advice to the CEO. How do we build this company? How can, and then I created, and then we closed that deal. I was buying a building in Blue Ash, and our competitor was offering $300,000 more than our best offer that we could provide. It was a German company. And I was buying from Nationwide Insurance, big company, big process, only numbers matter. We bought that building for $300,000 less than the highest bid from them. Because we told them it's important for you to look at what we are doing, the jobs we are creating, the life we are creating, the opportunities you will get from my people and telling them that this is a nationwide building. 300,000 is nothing. So you have to create that. I can give you examples of examples where we were thrown out. And every time it's a different thing, but you have to find that connection, what matters to your client. And sometimes you'll fail. Then you have to be agile to come up with something alternate that's not too different. So these are, some of the processes, that some of the learnings that we have had. Let's go, if you have any questions, please. I want to leave 10 minutes, 8 minutes for that.
So I got a question, I got a DM from Bianca asking about, her question is, are you saying that an introduction and hook and a background story on your PowerPoint that applies to your product isn't necessary? Or is it only if you see your investor losing interest that you should drop all of it and jump to the numbers? Bianca, I think the answer to this is really about judgments. Building your story and giving your background is important. And if you notice, we kind of did that at the beginning of our presentation. My dad was sharing his background, sharing his story. It's important to build that appetite. But as soon as it's built, stop selling that. Move on to the next phase, right? As soon as you see that someone has, you've got your hooks in, it's time to really start talking about what do they need? What is it? What problem can you solve for them? And again, we can send the 4 phases around.
But I'll add something. First of all, I totally agree with what you're saying. But I also will tell you, Bianca, it's an iterative process. Think about there are four things you have. You have emotional, you have conceptual, the vision, what this product can do. You have logical, which is exact feature functionality, and you have some terms and financial things. You have to do that iteratively. You have to serve a little bit, see how it's grabbing. And if you think it's too early, then you have to back off and go back to selling yourself more. You think you've sold enough. It's really judgment. And judgment is something that if you're an entrepreneur, founder, startup person, that is the number one need you have is judgment. Not even the skills, not even the degrees, the judgment, the drive. Those are the 2 things, and that's what you get paid on.
And that also is built over time. And so to your second question is, if you see someone losing interest, should you jump into the numbers? If that was, I don't have a lot of context, but my answer to that is no, you should not do that. If you see someone losing interest and you go super hard into the details portion of what you're trying to sell, then you've missed the fact that you still haven't built their appetite enough. You need to go back a step, you need to get them excited. And also over time, you'll learn, that judgment will become very, very strong, and you'll figure out when is the right time to talk about the deal terms. When do we make the math work? That's something that I frankly am working on myself. I've been in this career for less than 5 years. And every time I'm doing a deal, I'm still learning. What is that exact moment that you make the deal land? You make the deal terms work for everybody.
And,
So-
and one of the question is, who are closers? Okay. Are they people who close the deal? See, closers they close an outcome. An outcome may not be a transaction. Okay. Outcome may be a relationship. Outcome may be an investment. Outcome may be that somebody wants to join your company. Outcome may be they're not ready to join your company, but they can do some consulting for a time until they are ready for joining your company. Outcome is closing that to the conclusion where person actually joins, where customer actually buys, where investor actually invests. That outcome, how do you drive that? And you can apply that at every level.
Mahendra and Nu, there's one final question from Josh, and this is related to the pitch competition and a product that he has already been working on, an idea. So we'd love to get your feedback on his question. He said, we're feeling a little stuck in the prototyping stage because we don't have the capital to hire a professional product developer to see our product's true potential. Everything so far has been homemade, and we are on our own prototype's third iteration. How would you recommend that I move forward with my idea? It feels like selling our solution is difficult due to the fact we're still working on the proof of concept.
Can I quickly, because we don't have much time, I'll tell you that you gotta sell what you have. Okay. I'm telling you, I started with nothing. So you gotta sell something. What you have is an idea, number one, a prototype, number two, and equity. You still control the ownership of the company. Whatever that company is worth, $2 or $2 million, you still have that, right? You have to find somebody who can help you, where you tell them, I don't have cash. Where you tell them, you help me get through this stage, I can potentially give you 10,000, 1,000 options, 1,000 shares. I can do that. There are people who will help you. You need to close that deal. You need to find those people without capital. Constraints don't slow down true closers. Okay? You have to think and think outside the box and all that. I know that's a cliche. I'm telling you. I'll end with a very, very interesting joke. Have you ever seen ugliest house when you drive by and thought, who would buy this house ever? Right? Do you know there's a buyer for the house? I will not extend this example to other things that we feel early on in our life in college and school about people. But my point is, you absolutely, if you have something, you can find people who are great product designers who will help you while they are working full-time somewhere else, because that's all you can do. Okay.
And I will say, my first version of Admit Ally was a no tech stack. And I can send around this video by Avni Patel Thompson at the Y Combinator demo day from 5 years ago, talking about the first version of a product doesn't need to be the real deal that you spent millions of dollars on. You can find a skinny way to prove your value proposition, right? The first version of my video chat calls was Google Meets, and there were 2 type forms, surveys on the beginning and end of it, finding a mentor and a student and connecting them. I was the algorithm. I was manually connecting them via email, and they were meeting on a Google Meet, right? That proved that those conversations are valuable. So I should go and build a product that makes all of this happen magically and more beautifully, right? But you can prove things in simple and quick ways. And I know we're over, but I just want to, Umansh has asked this question, and I want to try to get to it very quickly. How do you understand the beliefs of the person you're trying to sell to?
And Uma, I think Anu is saying a really great point here. A lot of people want to design products so big that they lose the sight of it. 10% of the features are used by 90% of the people. Just focus on a little bit that you can actually show, so you can have breakfast money, so you can get to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's important to focus on what will get me the breakfast money. You're not going to have money for breakfast and lunch and dinner and next week together. You're in startup. Welcome to our world, right?
Just get to the next week and you're doing great.
Right. And that's where you need people. Why? Focus on like there are people who are takers. They want to help you. Sometimes people want to help you if they know where what you're going to, regardless of money. Sometimes they'll help you for money. Sometimes they'll help you for stock. Sometimes they help you for experience, and just find that connection.
Absolutely. And Zand, I think you answered Mancha's question super well. If you're trying to figure out the psychology of your buyer, go online and do your homework. LinkedIn stalk them, figure out what they've published, who they're following, what they're reading, everything. But also go and find people that are similar that you can go and spend time with, ask your questions to. When I was trying to sell products to colleges, I just went to conferences. I found the money, went to conferences, stayed in cheap Airbnbs, and then I just met with a bunch of people that worked underneath the buyer that I was trying to get to. And I was like, what does your boss care about? What exactly are you guys spending money and time on? What are the problems that you're facing? I don't know anything. Tell me everything. And I'm not going to try to sell you my product right now. I'm in listening mode. So go find people to talk to, be in listening mode, ask good questions, and you'll be able to find the psychology of your buyer. I know we're over, but thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Centrifuge for organizing. This is really fun for my dad and I to do together.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I hope I hope this is a bit helpful for a lot of our upcoming entrepreneurs, and especially our students.
Thank you all.
Much.
Yes, so thank you, Anu and Mahendra. I know I personally got a lot and learned a lot of new information from your session, and I know our students seem to be very responsive and have a lot of great questions to ask. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. We really appreciate it. If you haven't, I spammed it in the chat, but please fill out that survey. We really appreciate any and all feedback that you can provide. And that link, like I said, is in the chat. Again, a special thanks again to all of our sponsors, P&G, Kroger, First Financial, Taft, and KMK. And please, students and guests, be sure to join us this Thursday for a program called The Pocket Guide to Entrepreneurial Finance with Tim Schiegel and Sarah Phillips. So we hope you all have a great week, and we will see you on Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.